Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to your latest and maybe greatest, maybe not, Friday Ramblings. I'm, as always, your host, the Bardic One, David. And seeing as how we are 1 week out from Valentine's Day and all things love, let's switch to a similar L word. An L word that is much more about physical, much more about pleasurable. Larry! Yeah, not what you're expecting word, folks. That's because we are discussing not just any Larry, but we are discussing Leisure Suit Larry. An icon of the early days of PC gaming, featuring one of our favorite classic PC game companies, and that is Sierra Entertainment. Story of Larry goes back to the beginnings of Sierra and served as one of the all-time iconic game series in that it was one of those things of, dude, did you ever play those Leisure Suit Larry games? They're crazy. It's like all about, getting some, but it's goofy and funny, and dude, you gotta check them games out, man. And that's the fun of it, is they were games that were a little crude, innuendo-laced, sometimes flat out sexual, but it was always done tongue-in-cheek and with honest to goodness, make you puzzle through thoughtful sections in order to get to your goal. So let's start at the beginning of the basics. That is Leisure Suit Larry's beginnings, and then we'll do a quick run through of the series so we can all walk away knowing a little bit more about a game series that was very much emblematic of its time period for gaming, and today still stands as an example of something that we here at Lowe Productions do love contemplating in our free time, and occasionally here on our official programming products, and that is, just how much sexuality does the American public really want out of their commercial products? How low can you go on the lewdometer before you lose the audience? So, we're going to get our hair nice and pretty here. Woo! Gonna look my handsomest, just like my buddy Larry. And we're gonna go back. Take it on back. Going on back. All the way back to even before I was born. Because you can't really discuss Leisure Suit Larry until you discuss what led to Leisure Suit Larry. And that is, before we had Sierra Entertainment as we know it, we had online systems. And we had DOS. Not even Windows 3.1. We had DOS. Command prompts, no graphics to it. Now, back in those days, there were video games. Well, not technically video games because there wasn't any graphical element to it, but there were games on the personal computer. These were referred to as text-based games, obviously, because that's all you had on the screen was text. And one of the most commons were adventure games. Now, because of the nature of them being DOS-based, the games usually would consist of, you would get a description of a given locale, and then you would type basic commands like go to door. And it would say going to door, and then you would say open door, opening door, walk north, walking north. Hopefully the door is located north of you, or you'd get something like cannot go north, wall is there. And most of these text-adventure games, you were limited in what that first word could be, and they had to be very simple commands, usually 2-word commands. Go, use, look, take, maybe if it was fancy, examine. And then you would have one word after that. Go north. Take book. Examine book. It is a dictionary. Open book. And I know that for you modern gamers, that sounds extremely tedious, but that's the thing, folks. This is the predecessor to everything you guys have now. You know? And Online Systems, the company that would later rename itself Sierra Entertainment, they were making pretty good ones. Specifically in 1981, buddy of theirs, so I want to make sure I'm getting my credits right, well, a employee, but named Charles Benton, produced a game for the Apple II called Soft Porn Adventure. Pretty on the nose about what it is, but again, you're remembering a time period here, folks, where most people did not have computers in their homes, and if they did, children were not on them most of the time. Any games were generally made for a teenage or adult crowd. You might have some for little kids, but they were doing these with supervision because computers were still kind of a pricey luxury item in the early 80s. So, the basic idea of soft porn adventure is that you are a single young man cruising the town trying to get some good stuff, all about it loving. Now, there were puzzle elements, like any good text adventure, but being a text adventure, a lot of it was left up to the imagination. However, because that's what everything was doing these days, and the puzzles were pretty creative for its time, soft porn adventure did sell pretty well. Fast forward several years, in fact, we'll specifically get to 1987, so 6 years later, and we have let me go ahead and get this, keep my notes here straight, folks. Another, now Sierra Entertainment employee named Al Lowe approached Sierra's heads, Ken and Roberta Williams, with the idea of, you know what, now that we have graphics to use with our computer games, why don't we do a remake of Soft Porn Adventure? Specifically, let me do it. I'll change up the main character, make it a little more humorous, tongue-in-cheek, and they were like, hey, go for it, Al, you know, it's a good idea. Make it something for a little bit wider audience. Put a little more humor in it, make the main character a little more fleshed out and three-dimensional. So Al Lowe did, and we got the character of Larry Laffer. aka Leisure Suit Larry, as that is what he always wears. Short version, because as I said, we do not like to go to too much spoilerific details for you. Larry Laffer, aka the Leisure Suit Larry, is a adult male who has still managed to hang on his virginity much longer than most men do. He is short, dorky, tiny bit paunchy, but he is always hopeful. So one day, he decides to journey to the town of Lost Wages, a pretty blatant stand-in for Las Vegas, to finally lose his virginity once and for all, and maybe have a couple adventures along the way. This would be the first Leisure Suit Larry game, officially titled Leisure Suit Larry in the Land of the Lounge Lizards. And it was a commercial and critical success, which means not only did the official game reviewers love it, but so did the customers, and much profit was made. It also set the standard for the basic plot of any given future Leisure Suit Larry game, which is that Larry will journey through a locale, solving puzzles to charm his way through a series of women. However, something always seems to happen with those women. Either they're not quite the catch he thinks they are, and they're really just out to get something from Larry besides some bedtime romping, or fate just gets in the way. However, at the end of the game, there was always that one girl, that one lucky girl, that legitimately falls for Larry, even if those feelings only last a night. Larry, well, in the land of the lounge lizards, Larry got some lovin'. Larry Laffer. And thus, we had a formula that, with the backing of perpetual snarky smartass Al Lowe, making sure that these puzzles and misadventures always had a humorous take to them, and that the Larry character remained a lovable loser who we all secretly root for, even if he's the kind of guy we beat up in high school for his lunch money. Well, you got something people wanted to come back for, and so Leisure Suit Larry became a series when we got the sequel. Leisure Suit Larry goes looking for love in several wrong places in 1988. Now, the big thing with this particular game is that it does set up that no matter how lovely the wooing of the lady in the previous game is, the next game always starts off with Larry once again single. This and Larry changing locales. In the particular case of Looking for Love, aka Leisure Suit 2, Larry ends up on a tropical island, messing around with the KGB, the mad scientist Dr. Nonuki, and several local women. Despite being kind of an idiot, Larry manages to not only save the day, but marries the Island Chief's daughter. And, for the sake of continuity, also rescues a non-local, like himself, called Polyester Patty. Now you're going to understand why I said it's important for continuity in a minute. But that's where we end up with two. Larry is seemingly happily married, at least for one night, has saved a tropical island, and thus he even has a little bit of popularity. The things every lovable loser dreams of. And is ready to get some nookie after beating Dr. No Nookie. Now this game came out in 1988, only 1 year after the original Leisure Suit Larry. This tradition would continue in 1989 with Leisure Suit Larry 3, Passionate Patty in Pursuit of the Pulsating Pectorals. What? Who is Passionate Patty? Well, Passionate Patty is a retweaking of the originally intended one-off character Polyester Patty from Leisure Suit Larry 2. And in this game, you actually, depending on what part of the game you're in, get to control Larry or Patty, as they have their own separate misadventures that seem to keep crossing together, crisscrossing, resulting in fun and games of an innuendo-laced nature for both genders. Yay! Equality! Now, the story begins 5 years after the second game. And some things happen leading to Larry's married life becoming an unmarried life. Now, even though we get a series of women like in the previous games, the aforementioned Passionate Patty is the final girl. This results in fun and games, and Larry settling down once again. This time, hopefully for good, as he is hooked up with somebody who, like Larry, has a bit of a thing for misadventures that have a bit of a carnal take to them. So I know I bet you're expecting. Alright, so let me guess. Wonderful host. A year later, in 1990, we got Leisure Suit Larry 4. No. We did not get Leisure Suit Larry 4 1 year later in 1990. Leisure Suit Larry 4 has never been made. Well, gee, David, it seems kind of weird. You're doing a big series like this and rushing through these games when there's only 3 games in the series. It's not much of an iconic franchise. I never said that. There are more than 3 games. But there is no 4th game. 3 games? 4 games? There's more than 3 games, which would be 4. But there's no 4th game? So it didn't end with 3 games, which would mean there'd be a 4th game, but there's no 4th game? There is a 5th game, but there's no 4th game? No, there is no 4th game. You stay down. You don't get to come up. There is no 4th game. But there's a 5th game. Yes, there is. But how can that be the 5th game if there's no 4th game? Because remember where I said Al Lowe is snarky and a bit of a smartass? In 1991, he put out Leisure Suit Larry 5. References were made to a Leisure Suit Larry 4, The Case of the Missing Floppies. Now, over the years, there's been a bit of an urban legend about exactly why this decision was made. The most common consensus story that we can get into is that after hooking Larry up with Patty and producing 3 games, Lowe found himself in a little bit of a writer's block. He had felt that if he went back to formula once again and had Larry break up with yet another woman, it would kind of downplay the way he had created Passionate Patty, as he had felt like, at the time, she was his true love, and he really didn't want to get rid of that so soon. He understood the need for another game, he wanted to make another game, but he also cared about what little story there is to the Leisure Suit Larry games, as they are primarily point-and-click puzzle adventure games, but still, there is a story, and Larry is a good character who's been leading an interesting life so far. You know? So Al's like, look, I could come up with a good game. Wouldn't be a good 4th game, because I don't know where to go after 3. I can't think of a satisfactory answer. So eventually, he came up with the only answer that a guy like Lowe can come up with. Don't do the next chapter. Do the chapter after that. In short, he made a game that continued the story at a point where it was easier for him to start from scratch. Patty was gone. Larry was single again. And the game simply made references to there being an adventure that had already taken place. In short, Leisure Suit Larry 4 was a non-game. For the sake of storylines, there was a 4th adventure. We just never actually played it. In a lot of ways, it's a cop-out. He had writer's block. He simply chose, instead of trying to shatter the block, walk around it. On the other hand, given that the Leisure Suit Larry games were always tongue-in-cheek and satirical, it's kind of the only way you could take in a series like this. Eventually, it'd have to do something crazy and inane like that, because that's Larry Laffer. So, as I said, we got Game 5. Passionate Patty does a little undercover work. Now, that does mean Passionate Patty is still around. However, as I said, she's simply not married to Larry right now. We do get multi-character versions, like in 3, as both Larry and Patty are playable protagonists. And the plot is basically based around the fact that we don't know the plot of 4. Larry is amnesiac, basically having forgotten he was married, and is working in the adult film industry, specifically for a mafia-connected company. Meanwhile, Patty's recruited by the FBI to dig up incriminating evidence on 2 record companies which are suspected of hiding subliminal messages in their songs. Now, he does reunite with Patty at the end of the game. And everything seems well and good. However, their married bliss doesn't seem to last because she simply doesn't show up in the next game, Leisure Suit Larry 6, Shape Up or Slip Out. Could be Larry never 100%, was able to rebuild his marriage to Patty. These things happen. So we get Leisure Suit Larry 6, where after competing on a television game show inspired by the many mystery date love connection-esque shows of yesteryear, Larry, being the runner-up, goes by himself to a weekend health resort, Castellata Inn, where he finds various single females, mostly staff, couple guests, who have their own problems. He tries to help, hoping that will win favor with them and win his way into their beds. But, as usual, finds out most of them really didn't have carnal intentions with Larry and weren't going to be easily talked into it. However, he does find one particular guest who, after being given several gifts and spending some time getting to know her and her own misadventures that led her to Castellata, Larry manages to get his usual happy, not safe for work ending. Now I'm going to go ahead and just say one thing right here, because we've talked a lot about it. The guy is a horn dog, perpetually looking for lusty encounters, seemingly happy to have short-term romances, even if that short-term is only a single night. But in the comedic, satirical, lighthearted nature of Lowe's sense of humor and thus the Leisure Suit Larry games, I do need to go ahead and put this out. You do not actually in any of these games see any sex. These games by modern standards would, for the dialogue alone, more than any graphics, yeah, they'd probably be rated M, but you could probably go with a teen rating for a couple of the games. Because some of the games in the middle, 3 and 5, downplayed the lusty elements more than the adventure element, and played up the adventure element some. So I do feel want to go ahead and lay that out for people as we continue to discuss these last few Larry games, that, you know, by Hollywood movie type standards, you know, these would be like PG-13. I mean, the middle game's definitely PG-13. The first one where they leaned a little heavier into the concept, some of the, 6 and 7 where they kind of tried to go back to the classic flavor. You might get R, but again, that's more for the dialogue than anything actually graphically seen. You do get the occasional, bare breast shot, but that's usually things like pictures on the walls, or, the classic art style statues, or, nobody was clothed. Then any of the characters themselves. The characters themselves tend to be treated slightly more tasteful than you would expect from just hearing my basic summaries of, oh yeah, this guy's running around charming and seducing all these women, and he does get some at the end of every given game. And I'm even trying to curtail my language a little bit, because I do try to keep these videos, well, I'm not going to say all ages friendly, but despite the subject of these games, I am trying to keep them at least as wide and audience friendly as possible. Trust me, I could be very blatant about this stuff. Could just go ahead and use the coarse language, but this is about having fun, folks, so I am trying to have fun with it and keep it as lighthearted as my buddy Lowe does. One of my buddy, but definitely a guy I respect for the way he handles these kind of situations himself. So anyway, this brings us up to Leisure Suit Larry 7. And for many, many years. Now, this was in 1996, by the way. I did kind of drop some of my year dating there. Leisure Suit Larry 6 was in 1993. Although the full CD-based install version, because, 93, they were still using discs. CD version came out in 1994. So, 1996, we get Leisure Suit Larry Love for Sale. It was the last Leisure Suit Larry game written by series creator Lowe, and except for remakes, and was for many years the last feature original protagonist of Larry Laffer as the main character. Now, we'll get to Larry Laffer's comeback in just a moment. We got to go through things chronologically. So, Love for Sale takes place, as you would expect from the name, on a cruise ship. And as usual, Larry is single and is looking for his next female conquest. Now, one of the things they did in the 7th game to really kind of push hard on that wall of satirical and parody is that female members of this cruise ship are celebrity stand-ins. I'm going to go ahead and read you some of these names and see if you can guess the real-life female celebrity they are based off of. Drew Barrymore, Dumai Moore, Victorian Principles, Jamie Lee Curtis, Nail Me In, Why Don't Ya Jug, Annette Boning, and various other pop culture characters seen in the background, including folks resembling the Archie Comics gang, various incarnations of James Bond in the ship's casino, and porn icon Ron Jeremy walking around the background wearing basically nothing. Woohoo! So, you go around, solve some puzzles, play some mini games, try your best to woo some women. It's all good fun. It's all good Larry Laffer fun. To avoid spoilers, we're not going to tell you who Larry ends up with at the end. But as I said, this is the last to be written by series creator Lowe. And after this, Larry Laffer as a character went into a bit of retirement. Because, well, we're looking on 10 years now from when Lowe began this, and culture was changing. Leisure Suit Larry, bedecked protagonist, is not necessarily going to stay perfect and popular forever. So, we go forward to 8 years later, 2004, we get the spin-off games Leisure Suit Larry Magna Cum Laude, where we are introduced to the new main character Larry Lovage, who is Larry Laffer's nephew. Larry Laffer appears much older, running a bar in the town that the college is situated in, and will give his nephew a little bit of advice here and there. Larry Lovage, similar to his uncle, definitely has problems with the ladies, but through persistence and hope, does eventually sweet talk a few ladies in the name of impressing the female host of a reality game dating show thingamabob You know, one of those weird MTV hybrid shows that they were all about in the early 2000s. That was getting ready to film an episode on campus. Thus, we get the big finale where Larry Lovich ends up on the show, and for a rare occasion in the Leisure Suit Larry games, which makes sense because this was a spin-off and a little bit of a soft reboot for the series, you actually get to choose your ending by choosing one of 3 females, i.e. the female contestants on the game show, you end up with. Now, Magna Cum Laude, like 7 and the first one, definitely leans more into the sexual fan service inherent implication nature of the games. Which kind of makes some sense because you're dealing with a young, horny college student, and thus he's going to be doing as much as possible to try and score because, hey, look, I'm not judging. You know, we were all young and desperate at some point. He's trying to do his thing. He's trying to prove he's the biggest stud on campus and end up on this game show. Things happen. Plus, again, by this point, we are in the 21st century and priorities in gaming changed. I will say, for Magna Cum Laude's defense, as a Leisure Suit Larry spin-off and part of the greater meta series, there are still puzzle minigame elements galore, and if you are not familiar with these kind of point-click, explore, adventure type games, you can very easily get stuck and get lost. Yes, the game has built-in advice hints on how to keep proceeding, but at the core, it is possible to spend a large chunk of time just trying to get through one particular sequence in the game. If you are not experienced in these style games, or just a really good gamer by nature. With mini games such as playing rounds of quarters with the different ladies, it is very possible to lose these games and get stuck playing against that same opponent over and over again until you win by sheer luck if you don't have the reflexes for the game. Now, they did make a sequel, even though Larry Lovich did not grab the world as quickly as Larry Laffer originally did, 5 years later in 2009 with Box Office Bust, where Larry Lovich has now begun working at his uncle's studios, Laffer Studios, doing odd jobs and trying to uncover a mole from a rival studio who is attempting to sabotage, Laffer Studios. Now, this storyline was written by Alan Covert of Happy Madison Productions. And the previous game, let me see, who do we get to blame for this? Was produced by Joshua Van Velde, designed by Duncan McPherson, Tom Smith. So, those are who we get to hang with and look towards for this good times. Hardcore Leisure Suit Larry fans are a little iffy about the Larry Lovich spin-offs because there is no involvement from Lowe. It is a new character. Although Larry Laffer is still there to provide continuity, it's just not the same. But you know what? Personally, I'm not judging the games. You know, they were different games made for different audiences across different decades. These things happen. Now, because Magna Cum Laude and Box Office Bust were not the huge commercial successes that the early Larry Laffer games were, and because Sierra itself had been suffering from some financial problems, the games ceased after that for 4 years. In 2013, we got a remake of our original game, The Land of the Lion Lizards, with Leisure Suit Larry Reloaded. Now, this game was worked on with Al Lowe, although being a remake, you know, and crowdfunded via Kickstarter, it's kind of one of those things. It's like, yes, Al Lowe was involved. Yes, there is some, besides the graphical overhaul of the game, yes, there is some tweaks to the storyline and the art here and there. But it was still a remake. It wasn't a full game. But it was a good way to get fans talking about Leisure Suit Larry again. And the fact that the game was crowdfunded via Kickstarter proved that there was still an audience that missed Larry Laffer. Thus, we got, in 2018, Leisure Suit Larry Wet Dreams Don't Dry. Adventure video game developed by a German studio, Crazy Bunch, and published by Assemble Entertainment for Microsoft Windows, Mac OS, Nintendo Switch, and PlayStation 4. Now, unfortunately, Al Lowe was not directly involved with this game. So, once again, this is a Larry game. This is a Leisure Suit Larry. Well, it's a Larry Laffer game. This is the official Leisure Suit Larry series, but this is not something made with Al Lowe's loving touch. The basics of this game is that Larry has spent the last 30 years referencing basically the, let me see real quick, do the math, that would take us up to the rough time period of the earliest Leisure Suit Larry games. This 30 years would put it Larry disappearing around 1988. So, even though the Leisure Suit Larry games came out until 1996, as far as this game is concerned, Larry had been missing since 1988. Thus, he is way behind the times on technology and modern social etiquette and culture, but he is still hopeful he can find a way to get some loving, at least of the physical kind, if not the emotional kind. Now, the game has received mixed positive reviews. PC version currently holds a rating of 71 on Metacritic based on 16 reviews, while the Nintendo Switch version holds a rating of 50 based on 8 reviews, indicating mixed or average reviews for both. Most critics have been, and reviewers have been, generally favorable to the games, although they admitted that the story wasn't the greatest, compared to the classic Leisure Suit Larry games, and the game's puzzles could occasionally confuse players. Plus the simple fact that, over the last few years here, folks, game protagonists that aren't even shy about admitting that it's all about getting the girl in the end, and sometimes getting her in the end. Woo, double entendre! Aren't exactly socially relevant and going to appeal to mass audiences. So, it's not surprising that so far there has not been any announcement of any games past this one. So, what does that tell us about Leisure Suit Larry? What is the conclusion of all of this? Well, it's very simple. The classic Leisure Suit Larry series, the first 6 games. Yes, by modern cultural standards, for you young viewers and young players, the games are extremely old-fashioned, both in interface, interaction, and sensibilities. However, for people kind of my age and a little older who actually remember the 80s, even if we were very young, they will give you a good sense of nostalgia, not just for how games were back then. The classic point and clicks, which Sierra basically built an empire off of before moving on to, other more modern, more action-y type games. And we'll eventually touch on those in future videos, as during their run, Sierra Entertainment made many, many, many classic games. But, again, the mindset of the 80s, early 90s, and the sex comedies. These were the kind of things that, they worked for people who have a certain sense of humor. So, if you have that kind of sense of humor, where lovable losers and somewhat outdated pop culture references and games based more on exploring, and as I keep saying, because it is the official term for this genre of game, point and clickings with some puzzling elements is your cup of tea, give it a whirl. And don't worry, it's actually very easy to give it a whirl. I should note that the following statement is in no way a paid advertisement. We have no official business affiliation with the following website. This is simply information and recommendation provided very honestly by your narrator. Legalese over. If you want to check out the classic series for a reasonable price, you can go to our good friends GOG.com, because they are good old games. And you can get, let me look up your current prices as of the resulting of right now. Guess what? GOG.com has for you for $9.99 Leisure Suit Larry 1 through 6, including the original subtle VGA remake of Leisure Suit Larry 1. One of those things, basically, a couple years afterwards, out in Master PC. I didn't make a big deal at the time because storyline-wise, puzzle-wise, nothing was changed. But yes, 1 through 6, 6 and 1 being in a couple different graphical formats, depending on what you prefer for your retro gaming. All in one package, along with a few extras such as special icons, wallpapers, classic tip and hint guides that were originally print are now in nice e-format for you. You can also pick up the more recent games. Let me go ahead and pull that up real quick. Hope if I spell things correctly. You can get Wet Dreams Don't Dry for $29.99. You can get Magna Cum Laude Uncut and Uncensored for $5.99. And you can get the 2013 remake release Leisure Suit Larry Reloaded for $9.95. Thus, taking care of all your Larry needs. All on one wonderful site. There's actually a ton of other great games on GOG.com. Pretty much everything from Sierra Entertainment worth playing, along with a few other studios. Check the site out if you've never been there. You can tell them I sent you, but they're not going to know who I am, because, as I said, this is in no way any kind of official endorsement deal. I'm just telling you where I got my current copies of the Leisure Suit Larry series. And yes, you can play them on your most recent versions of Windows, because like all nostalgia-filled retro games on GOG.com, they include built-in emulators. Thus, your old games will play on your modern PCs with no issues. See, they make it easy for you. You can get game bundles, so you can get entire series in one. They're programmed and optimized to run on your current systems, but still have that classic retro flavor to them. What else can you want? What else do you want? So check out Leisure Suit Larry. If you're still not 100% sure, you need a little more spoilerific details, that's okay. Since they are infamous, iconic games, you can find a few different Let's Plays of the Leisure Suit Larry series, at least a few of the games, on YouTube. I'm not going to tell you specific channels because, personally, I'd prefer you stay on Roulette Productions and just watch our videos all day, every day. But I want to repeat, keep watching, look for Easter eggs. At the very least, go ahead and subscribe to us so you can get alerts about your Friday ramblings, your Tuesday night game streams, and the sporadically scheduled releases from my partners. Also check out rouletteproductions.com for your written article goodness. And you know what? If you can find Al Lowe on social media, go ahead and send him a thank you for, spending a good 10 years working on a game series that, by hook or by crook, is one of the most unique, lovable, and flat-out humorous things to ever grace the PC. In fact, I think I want to go hunt him down right now and see how active he is on social media. Promise, Al, no celebrity stalking. Just want to know that you are in good spirits and in good health. Because for the hours of entertainment you've already brought me with the Classic Larry series, hey, I salute you, buddy. Much respect. For all my regular listening audience, hey, come back next week. I'll try to talk about something a little more PG. Maybe, or maybe not. But either way, it's going to be a lot of fun. Bye-bye.